Hello YouTube, it's Klein here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we are doing another light novel review. Today we are reviewing Solo Leveling Volume 2, and this is written by Chu Gong, and is published by Yen Press under the Yen on imprint. Let me see if I can show you it. Yeah, there we go, this one's it. There you go, this is Solo Leveling Volume 2. It's this nice kind of reddish color, which actually looks kind of brown when you put it next to the first one. Volume 3 is supposed to be slightly more purple than this, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, like I said, it's published by Yen Press. And the demographic here is adult fantasy. You could argue that this is a YA type of title, but the main character is definitely an adult. He's not a young teenager, and he's not really 18 either. I'm pretty sure he's like 20-something. So this is definitely in the adult fantasy kind of area. Maybe you could call this new adult, which is it's kind of weird genre that's developing here in the West right now, which is like things written in the way YA is written, but with adult topics. This is supposed to kind of hit more of the actual demographic that reads YA, which is like adult women, which is kind of interesting, but I don't necessarily know that this would fall under that genre or that demographic label. So we'll just say that this is adult fantasy. The main character is an adult, but it does have a lot of elements that you could say are shonen-esque if you wanted to. Now, the genres here are action, fantasy, and lit RPG. Maybe you could argue that this is a game lit story and not actually lit RPG. But I would definitely say that since the game elements are so important, the leveling, the way in which he acquires items and all this sort of stuff is so important, this definitely falls under the lit RPG genre more so than just general game lit, right? So there you go. Now, this does have an adaptation, and it's a manhwa, which is a Korean comic book, and that's pretty cool. I know that Volume 2 recently came out, and Volume 3 is supposed to come out soon, but because it's a slower adaptation, I think the first two volumes are only about a third of the, like the first 2/3 of the first book, like the first light novel. So depending on how fast you want to consume the story, you should check out which version you want. I definitely think that the manhwa is really good. The coloring on it is very beautiful, and the art that they chose to use was also really nice as well. I do want to pick it up, but I mean, it's $20 a volume. The light novel is $15, and it's like twice the content. Maybe actually even 3 times as much content per book. So like for me, the light novel is the right way to go, mostly from the economic perspective. But I mean, whatever everyone wants to do is up to them, right? So there you go. Now, the premise here is basically that Jinwoo continues to level up from Volume 1, and he's clearing out these dungeons to help out his friend Jinho, I think is his name. But now he has to deal with people becoming interested in him, in Jinwoo, now that it's becoming noticeable that he's a very powerful character, a very powerful hunter in this world obsessed with powerful hunters, right? And so a lot of stuff's starting to happen around him that he's not really happy with. And then beyond that, stuff happens like beyond him, like beyond Korea in the US, that is kind of changing up the way that we, the reader, look at the world here. And it's very, very good. I actually think it's very nicely done. But there's, things that are coming up that could flip the world on its head. And it's very, very interesting. So the premise here is really good. I really like the story. I think the book was wonderful. It's so good. It has this kind of odd density to it. Like, you just feel like a lot is happening, even though when you sit down and think about it, it hasn't really moved forward very much, but it has a lot of stuff to it that is just very interesting to kind of watch out for, and I think it's very good. So let's get into the proper review here. The plotline here is pretty basic again, but it's very good. It has this very general, just kind of like leveling, kind of grinding aesthetic here, or style to it. Very similar to early Shield Hero. And very similar to a lot of lit RPG, game lit type of stories that kind of start off really slow because the character just needs to be able to have time to level up before he can actually start doing stuff, right? And I think that the writing style here is very good, or at least maybe the translation. of it is very good because it doesn't really feel slow. It doesn't feel boring, which is, very nice since this is kind of like the boring part of the video game, right? Or of the video game-esque aspect of it, right? And we mostly follow Jinwoo as he fights up, these bad guys in the dungeon. And I think that the reason why it doesn't feel so slow is because we only see the fights that really, really matter, the fights that are important to character development and to developing the world. So we don't actually see him fighting thousands of monsters like crazy. We only see him fighting the monsters that matter, the monsters that are going to advance him to meaningful levels, or the monsters that create an issue in the world building and stuff like that. So it's very good. I think it's very nicely done again. Just overall, wonderful storytelling here. And then we get this subplot development with this guild called the White Tiger Guild, who are trying to recruit Jinwoo, which actually ends up leading into this very badass battle sequence with Jinwoo that kind of develops that Jinwoo has this very kind of dry personality, this kind of idea that, if you're not strong, you need to understand that you're not strong. And this kind of thing that kind of comes from the fact that he was weak at one point and now he's strong, which is kind of interesting because it would kind of be different from what a usual shonen protagonist goes through, but it's definitely a more pragmatic kind of character development for Jinwoo, and I think it's very, very good. And then we have these kind of crazy creatures show up that have to do with a badass battle. We have these things called ice elves, and then there's demons that are very, very cool. I really like the plotline here. The story and the battles were very, very good. Overall, wonderful stuff. Okay, so characters-wise, we get a few different characters from the White Tiger Guild. We get An Sang-min, who is the guy that is trying to recruit him. He is the top recruiter for the White Tiger Guild. And he's kind of shady in a way that isn't horrible. Like, he doesn't have bad intentions. But to Jinwoo, he comes off really, really shady. And it leads to Jinwoo kind of flexing his intimidation, his battle aura, I guess. And it kind of scares An Sang-mi a lot. It's very funny. Then we have Chikul, or Kichul, which is An Sang-min's, what's the proper word here? His lackey, his underling, and he has a very fun personality as well because he's very witty and he comes up with like good excuses on the spot, which is very nice. I think it's very good because, generally this story doesn't have very good side characters just now or just yet. And I'm liking that there's including some, and the ones that are included maybe aren't necessarily not the strongest, but they bring in some fun, kind of extra stuff to the story, and I like that a lot. And then the last character we get is Park Hee-jing, who is a female hunter, and she ends up being embroiled with Jinwoo during one of these situations that happened because the White Tiger Guild is trying to recruit him, and she ends up very interested in him because he essentially saves her life in a very kind of convoluted battle kind of thing. And I like her. I think she's interesting. I'm not too sure what she's supposed to represent just yet or what she's supposed to be doing, but it's nice to have some more female characters because so far the story has been very male-oriented, very male-centered. So it's nice that we're starting to get more female characters brought in. And then we have Yoo Jin-ho, which is obviously Jinwoo's friend. I think I'm reading their names backwards. I wrote this down based on the wiki, and so it has it in like the proper order, or the proper Korean order, I think. So that's why I'm reading it that way. But Jin-ho is a very interesting kind of guy. He's the son of this very big tech tycoon kind of guy. And he's trying to kind of branch out and do his own thing and kind of show his father that, he's a good person and a good, strong worker. And he's using Jinwoo, or maybe Jinwoo's using him, in order to do this. And it's a very good kind of relationship that they're developing because it almost feels like the kind of relationship that you see in like delinquent characters in manga. Like the top guy in charge is the one that's like the very strong one. And then the side characters that are following him are kind of like the comedy relief kind of characters that are kind of like, yes, boss, whatever, boss. that sort of thing. I think it's kind of like that, and it's kind of funny. And it almost gives this kind of mafia vibe to Jinwoo and Jinho, and it's very fun. I like their interactions quite a bit. And then there's this girl who's in the same class as Jinwoo's sister that ends up being a hunter, that ends up interacting with Jinwoo kind of out of the blue, but also not really out of the blue. And she isn't like a very important character, but she kind of highlights Jinwoo's humanity to an extent. Or like his kind of difficulty in the kind of way he's changed now that he has leveled up. And it's a very kind of interesting interaction that they have, but it's not very much there. I think there's going to be more in Volume 3, but who knows? Honestly, the way light novels work is very difficult to kind of gauge what things are going to, what kind of sort of things are going to happen in later volumes. But yeah, world building wise, super solid. Lots of development of the mystery of the leveling system, I guess, and of who Jinwoo is and why he is able to have this system and stuff like that. And then there's a lot of development of the monsters in the dungeon. We learn that they're actually intelligent, and they have like this voice in their head, like this kind of god character that kind of tells them to kill humans in a very kind of weird way. And I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if that's kind of showing that the portals and the gates and stuff are kind of controlled by a higher being, or if it's kind of showing that, you know, this is a video game, or what sort of situation it's trying to show. But I thought it was very interesting. There's a very good development there. Art-wise, there is none, so this is like more of a book than it is a light novel or something in the line of Monogatari, where it's like there's really no illustrations at all. Mostly you're focusing on this kind of easy-to-read story. Fan service-wise, there's also none in this volume. I don't really think that there was any in the previous volume either, so this is a relatively safe story, mostly because there's no art style, and then there's no kind of secondary author to kind of pay attention to things that are maybe not as important. So you won't really have that. I don't know necessarily that you won't have fan service in the manga or the manga adaptation, but I would assume that it's probably not going to be very heavy, if any at all, until there's like proper fan service in the light novel. But I'm not too sure. Artists tend to kind of do their own thing, so I can't say anything about it. Rating wise, this is a 4 out of 5. It was super enjoyable. It's very good. It continues to be good from before, but it still hasn't gotten to the point where it blows my mind. It's just a story that I really enjoy, that I find very easy to read, but very enjoyable to read as well. So this is just like definitely above average and definitely very enjoyable, but like it hasn't blown my mind, and I just like, it doesn't have to. Mostly the 4 is out of enjoyment more than it is out of like amazing writing or plot line or world building or anything like that. It's mostly just because I really, really enjoy it, and I can't exactly tell you why, if that makes sense. But yeah, so I definitely recommend it. I think it's very good. And if you like things like Dungeon Busters, which is a J-novel title, or Shield Hero, or any of those kind of like video game-esque manga and light novels, you'll probably definitely like Solo Leveling, because it does have a lot of those same kind of tropes, but it does have this kind of a little bit more kind of urban fantasy, low fantasy kind of feel to it, where it's not really so obsessed with kind of having this video game aesthetic, this tabletop video game aesthetic, or no, this tabletop role-playing aesthetic. It's mostly just a conduit for the badassery that's going to happen with the characters. So there you go. That's my take on that there. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Obviously, it's very helpful. It helps me as an individual, because it doesn't really help the channel too much right now, but it helps me as an individual kind of feel like what I'm doing is, you know, fun, I guess, or good for someone. So I really appreciate whenever someone comments on my videos. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. But yeah, thank you guys very much. See you guys later.